welcome back. This time I'm sitting in front of our cozy fireplace. This video is going to be about how to register to work as a doctor with the Irish Medical Council to work as a doctor in Ireland. At the last video that we had, I was telling you more about EPIC verification. So this is the next step that you do after that's completed. So the Irish Medical Council is the overseeing body for all doctors that work in Ireland. So every doctor that is here, every physician that's here in Ireland practicing has to have an active registration with the Irish Medical Council to work and to be employable. So some important concepts to understand before choosing your registration pathway. In Ireland, family doctors are called general practitioners. And in Ireland, typically the complete training to be a specialized general practitioner is about 4 years as opposed to the 3 years in the United States. Once you have completed GP training, you are either considered a registrar or a specialist. A registrar is a non-consultant, non-training doctor that basically operates under a supervised license, which is a relatively loose term because you really aren't supervised in the sense that you are in the United States. And then a specialist, GP specialist, also called a GMS GP because they hold the medical card or GMS patients. Those are fully unsupervised, full licensed general practitioners here in Ireland. So in the US, what we classically call a specialist is called a consultant here. So that would be your orthopedics, your dermatology, your psychiatry. Anyone who is not a family doctor or general practitioner is called a consultant. So when I say the word specialist, GP specialist, I'm not talking about any training really outside of family medicine. So as you can imagine, GP specialists or GMS GPs make more here in Ireland in terms of income. But a lot of international doctors who are trying to come here to work as a GP will initially register as a registrar, a GP registrar, because it's quicker and it's an easier way to get into the Irish medical system. And then once they touch down here, they will pursue specialist registration. There are plenty of folks who also will just apply immediately for the GP specialist license, but it is more expensive, it takes more time, and it is a gamble because if at the end of the few $1,000s they decide that you don't meet the criteria, you don't get that money back. And so it is a bit more of a gamble. So given all that information, I chose to pursue the GP registrar pathway in the IMC, just because I wanted to get out of the United States as soon as possible, and that was the quickest, most assured way for me at the time. I specifically was aiming to get a critical skills employment permit, which is what I have, and as a US citizen I don't need a visa, which helps, so I just need that critical skills employment permit. And the way to get that is to register with the IMC, get a job, and then your employer typically will pay that permit fee, which is about $1,000. In order to qualify for the critical skills employment permit as a doctor, you need a full-time 2-year contract, and you have to stay with that first employer you have for at least 9 months, and then if you want, you can switch to a different employer, but you do need that 2-year contract in order to qualify. So I'm mostly going to be talking about the registrar application pathway in this video because that's one that I'm familiar with. I haven't yet applied to be a specialist because I've only touched down for a little over a month here in Ireland. But I'm going to go a little bit through my timeline from A to Z in terms of starting this process and when I actually landed and started working here. So one of the variables I'm going to mention just at the forefront that affected my timeline was that in Ireland there are really 2 hiring periods for doctors, and between it's really a dead zone in terms of hiring. And so January and June are those hiring periods. And because I started in November, I didn't have everything and get registered and everything until, March, April. And so that, of course, affected how quickly I was able to get a job and set foot in Ireland. Hiring periods. January applicants tend to be people like me who are existing doctors who've been out of training and are trying to get into the Irish medical system, or doctors here who are trying to jump to a different job. The June applicants tend to be people who just finished their GP training here in Ireland, so it's a bit more flooded with new applicants who are typically able to accept a little lower pay and worse conditions. So it took me about 2 months to get Epic verified, which was a long time. And then to actually complete my Irish Medical Council application for a registrar, it took about 3 to 4 weeks. And then once I actually submitted it, it took another 8 weeks before it was actually approved, and I was placed onto the Medical Council list of hireable GPs. So once I got onto the list and I had an IMC number and I was active in registration with the IMC, I didn't actually get a job interview until about 6 weeks after. And again, that's because I was during that dead zone of hiring. And then even then I didn't get an actual job offer and a contract until about 12 weeks after I was registered with the IMC. And then from there, I had to actually sign the contract. I had actually a solicitor here in Ireland look through it to make sure everything looked okay. And I should clarify, a solicitor here in Ireland it's a lawyer. They just call them solicitors here. I can drop the link for the solicitor I used down below. There's quite a few employment solicitors or lawyers here in Ireland. Obviously, you want to use one that isn't directly affiliated with your employer so that they have no conflicts of interest. So it took about a week or two to actually get my contract signed, and then once I had the contract, I could apply for my critical skills employment permit. And once I applied for that, it took another 5 to 6 weeks for the government to actually approve my critical skills employment permit. And then that last little piece that I needed to before I could start working here in Ireland was indemnity, which is medical malpractice. In Ireland, doctors are responsible for getting their own indemnity. So it's not through your employer, it's not arranged by your employer, you have to get it on your own. It will often be paid for by your employer, but you do have to arrange it. So once I got my critical skills employment approved, I had the form, I submitted my application for indemnity with a very common one here in Ireland, and it took about 2 weeks for that application to be approved, where I had active indemnity, and then I could start work here in Ireland. So now I'm going to take you to the Irish Medical Council website, which I found a little bit difficult to navigate, to show you where the main websites are that you'll be using, so to actually get your application together. All right, so we're here at the Irish Medical Council website. As you can see, it's medicalcouncil.ie here. Most Irish government websites end in .ie. Eventually, when you do have an actual account with the Irish Medical Council, you'll go here to Doctor Login. But for now, since we're starting the process, I'm going to show you where you go. You go to registration applications, and then here's the first time registration applications. You'll check the eligibility chart, see what you qualify for. Like I said, technically I qualify for the specialist qualifications pathway. However, because I wanted to get there quicker, I decided to go the registrar pathway initially. So I'm going to show you what I did here. So you go here to the division of the Register of Medical Practitioners, and general registration is where the registrars are. So that's what I did. Specialist registration is for specialist registration. as you can imagine. So consultants, specialists, anyone who is applying either to be a GP specialist or a consultant use this pathway. You can actually create a doctor's portal account before obviously submitting the application. So you would do this here. So it talks a little bit about creating an online account. That usually happens the same day as you apply, as compared to Epic, which usually took a couple days to actually create the account. And then once you have the account, that's when you start the application for the general registration or specialist registration, depending on what you're doing. So for general registration, I, as I mentioned, am an American trained doctor, so I would be a non-EU trained doctor. If you were trained within the EU, you would choose this first option here. So as a non-EU trained doctor, I qualify for the higher qualifications route, which means that I have higher qualifications. I have a board certification in family medicine through a recognized residency program in the US. And so, when I go through here, it will tell me what I need to apply for the higher qualification route for general registration. So this is your checklist. All right, so now we have the document checklist required for the general registration through the higher qualifications route. Again, this is not for specialist registration. So this is what I did. So you do need a notarized copy of your current passport. I recommend getting one in color. And then this number 2 item is what took me a little bit of time. It's what caused it to be 2 to 3 weeks for me to actually get my application submitted, which is getting an original certificate from the registration body directly to COG. So you can't receive the certificate and upload it. It has to be sent from your registration body to the medical council directly. When they say registration body, what they're referring to is specifically your state licensing board, right? So wherever you have been licensed in the last 5 years. So say, this is not my case, but say I originally started off in residency in Texas, and then I moved post-residency to Maryland, then I would need to get a original certificate of good standing / current professional status from both Texas and Maryland, dated within the last 3 months, and sent over to the Medical Council of Ireland. And so the state that I was currently licensed with required that I submit this request in writing through snail mail. So, and with a check, because it does cost money. For my state, it was about $50 to get this certificate sent. And then it took them about 2 weeks to actually process it from the date that I actually mailed it out. And then of course the EPIC reports for your basic medical qualification, your higher qualification, and then your 3-year training program. You don't, as coming from the United States, you don't need to have taken any sort of English as a second language test to prove your competency in English, because you obtained your degree in an English-speaking country. So you don't need to do number 6. And if you are not currently practicing in Ireland, you don't need to do number 7 either, because you wouldn't have gotten an indemnity in Ireland. So really it's going to be 1 through 5 that you need to actually submit the application. Hi, this is Haley coming at you post-editing. I did want to also mention that the other thing that took a little bit of time in order to get my application submitted was getting the IMC to add my medical school to their list of institutions on the portal. Of course, I do have a world recognized medical school, but really they only have on their portal the institutions of previous applicants. So no one from my institution had yet applied to the IMC. So you may need to request that they add your institution to their list in order to complete your application. All right, so I'm going to talk about a little bit about if you wanted to pursue specialist registration. So when you scroll down, instead of choosing general registration, you'll choose specialist registration. And then if you're like me and are trained outside of the EU, or either trained outside of the EU or have not been recognized already by an EU state in terms of your specialist qualifications, then you'll need to do what's called a Category E application. And so that will be here, evaluation of existing training and experience. And then what you'll need to do is, with this online contact form, request a specialist application pack for whichever specialty you're applying for, whether that be general practitioner, psychiatry, endocrinology, whatever it is. And then that application pack you'll receive, it is pretty intense, so it will probably take you a few weeks at the very least to get it all together. And then you will submit that application onto the online portal. So I'm going to show you the fees as well. So so we have a couple of different divisions, obviously. It's going to be a €410 first time application fee, and then you'll have to pay $560 to register once the application is approved. So a little, under $1,000. For the specialist division, similar, so $640 application fee. Once approved, registration fee is $560. But for the evaluation of an existing training experience, which is what a Category E person has to do, you're looking at over €4,000. And like I said, that's going to take longer than the 2 months it took me to get approved. And you would not get your money back if they chose to not recognize your qualifications. So you're looking at easily €5,000 with the Category E specialist application. So just please do be aware of that. And then once you are actually on the general registration, like I am, for example, and I'm wanting to transfer from the general register division to a specialist division, then I have an additional application fee in addition to the $4,000, a little over $4,000 for the evaluation of qualifications application packet. So please do be aware there is quite extensive costs involved, and weigh your options carefully. And in the description, I have dropped the resource websites that I used to help provide the most accurate information I could at this time. Thank you for watching this second video in this series. If you found this video helpful, please share, like, and subscribe. In future videos, I intend to talk a little bit about the Canadian process, how to make your wait productive, because there is a lot of waiting, how to get your affairs in order, and the international move itself. Thank you, and talk to you next time.